you haven't thought about your brand strategy in that context, and you think you're going to rely on a few good case studies and a nice website, man, that's what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
Ultimately, your brand strategy should be doing is it should be.
Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I unfold creative business minds. My name is Marco Pfan, and now I just want you to sit back and enjoy the show. We are back, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Antonopoulos, and he runs Tank, which is a strategic consultancy / branding studio down in Melbourne, Australia. Why is this recording special to me in this episode? Because Jim is kind of like, he was the first mentor when after I sold my studio, and he really got me into this coaching and online business that I'm into now. So that was like a big change for me, and that's all because of you, Jim. Thanks for that.
A long time ago.
It actually is a long time. It was like 2014 or something. That's when you first launched your strategic masterclass, right?
Yeah. No, I've known you for a long time, Marco. That's funny.
We never met in person.
No, we haven't. You used to live in Sydney, didn't you?
Yeah. No, it was like I was in Sydney. It was like 2011 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, before I met you. Yeah, that's right.
Before we
had
met,
that
yeah.
in common. You knew a little bit of Australia.
Yeah.
But I met you, it was about 2015.
15, yeah.
It's almost 10 years ago. It's a long time.
And the reason why I want you to be on the show is because you have incredible expertise on strategy for creatives.
Yeah.
You have a very simple way to explain that, and would love to, to me, a lot of creatives need to get more into strategy, but they don't necessarily understand what strategy is and how to apply that to their process and actually how to sell it to the client.
Yeah, of course.
So what is strategy? Let's start with a simple question. What's strategy?
Oh, look, strategy is really simple. It's a set of choices to achieve an outcome. And people find it really difficult to make choices. People find it really difficult to align on an outcome and even get clarity on what the outcome is. So therein lies the complexity. It's not in strategy, it's actually in people where the complexity exists. Strategy is very simple. But you'd be surprised at how many people, not just creative people, but organizations get it wrong. They think strategies are all about setting goals, which is one aspect of defining an outcome, but really it's really so much more than that.
Talk to me about that complexity thing. I know you work for even big budget, on big government contracts even. There must be a lot of complexity. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think, there is. And the complexity is not in the process. It's not in the scope of work. It's not in the contract. The complexity is in people. It's in relating to people. And I think one of the things that creative people and creative industry can get better at and is actually understanding how to manage people, stakeholders, and the various stakeholders. Some are great, kind, creative people. Others are terrible, weak leaders, right? There's all of those and everything in between. So all of that exists in every organization, irrespective of whether you're working in Melbourne or Munich or Sydney or wherever. So getting really well equipped in managing and understanding stakeholders is key. It's really important.
How can the common creative, the common studio owner get a hold of leading their clients? I know that this is a difficult subject. How do you teach people to do that?
It's really difficult. So when we met, I think I'd just realized in my business, I reached a point where I hated what I was doing. Really. We had about 26, 27 staff, and I realized that I wanted to share everything that I know at the time. My career began in 1990, so I've been doing this for a while. So I remember I developed that strategy masterclass online course, which is still out and available. That's where we met. And one of the things, to answer your question, one of the main things that I received a reply on, I always received a lot of emails from Strategy Masterclass students, was the section about leadership. And people were surprised that, strategy, that their mindset was in thinking about this strategy, which in their mind was just tell me the process. Whereas I actually diverted them away from that and got them to think about their position as a leader and the idea of leadership, because leadership and strategy, they go hand in hand, right? They go hand in hand. And a lot of creative people that I meet don't actually bring those two together. A lot of creative people believe that strategy is essentially a process, that a few steps that you follow, and they can easily learn it. Whereas it's a little bit more complex than that in its simplicity.
So what is it like to make the complex simple? What is it like? Okay, they come in, they believe strategy is like a process they can learn. What do you teach them? Like what do you give them that they don't expect?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the first thing is mindset change, to understand that if strategy is a set of choices to achieve an outcome or get somewhere, which is an outcome, they have to understand their role in making those choices and how there requires a strategic leader on both sides. If you're working with a client, both sides of the organization, yours and theirs, need that strategic leadership to make those choices.
Okay.
And you also need the understanding between you and the client that at various points in the journey, some choices and decisions need to be made, and therein lies accountability. And those things are really important to understand in the journey of developing strategy, because you can actually make a lot of choices that are wrong. And that's all fine. That's perfectly fine. But you have to be willing to accept that they might be right or wrong. And in that blurriness is the existence of people misunderstanding and misinterpreting strategy, where a lot of creative people believe that strategy is a path towards executing the visual identity. For example, it's not that at all.
So is it more like a set of principles rather than a step-by-step process?
Yeah, it is a set of principles, and those principles can change depending on the problem that you're faced with, because essentially you might be making a set of choices to solve a problem or achieve some kind of outcome or go to a destination. Absolutely, those principles will vary and change and mold, but there are some universal truths, some sort of fundamentals, like guiding principles are really important in a strategy. They are fundamentals, but yes, the framework kind of changes depending on the problem that you're faced with, but the essence of it is the same.
I want to make this more accessible to people. Do you have like an example or something where when you work with a complex organization on a complex project, and how did you get like the stakeholders to fall in line with your thinking?
That's one of the most difficult things is in any sort of strategy development project. So it's so important to spend a lot of time actually understanding the problem. And a lot of times when we're presented with, let's say, a very detailed brief or a problem document, we have to actually question that. And that's really important. We have to question the fact as to how that was actually created and whether that actually is true. And that is going back to the people who created it, usually your clients, right? And asking them a lot of hard questions. And this happens so often, that initial brief alters and changes, and that influences the way we then move forward. We might spend 60 to 70% of the time just understanding what the problem is we're solving. And that's billable work. That's work that we charge for. But any strategy, you read any good book about strategy, you'll see the emphasis on diagnosis, which is essentially diagnosing the problem. Because if you don't have an intimate understanding of the problem, how can you then develop a strategy to solve it? You can't.
So how do you, if you get some pushback on that initial, like if the client says, no, that's the brief, like we know what we're doing, things like that, do you accept that or do you still insist?
Yeah. What I mentioned earlier is accountability is really important. So sometimes it's really important, firstly, to identify who makes the decisions, who's the strategic leader. And if you are Marco, then if you push back and say, no, I'm happy with this, then you have to understand that you're accountable for that. Mm-hmm. And that decision will influence everything else that comes after it, right? And if something happens in 6 months' time, we always roll back to a decision point. And then that decision point points to a person. So if you understand that you're accountable for this decision, that's great.
I love that.
We'll move forward, but then we will also roll back whenever we're questioned, and we'll always go back to the decision point that influenced that outcome.
I love that what you just said, like you actually connect the decision to a person. So someone is personally responsible for the trajectory of the process, of the work, the process, everything. That actually might get people thinking about not moving too fast. That's true.
Well, you should.
So I know that you run real programs with your client, right? It's not just you come in and they hand you the brief and then you deliver on the brief, basically. But you actually is this like a sprint you have for your client? Is a program? Like, how do you actually run those projects, those strategic projects, and also the delivery of the branding and everything else?
Yeah, usually we get engaged. We used to be a really traditional, when we met, you and I met, it was 10 years ago. We were a relatively traditional creative agency. You know, we'd run a project beginning to end. We'd have a project manager, an account manager, all the layers that you would think, designers would have all that. But these days we're very different because I kind of broke that, we changed all that model in our business. These days we kind of get a phone call from the client that's sometimes before they've identified what the actual problem is. They know there's a problem, they know change must happen, and they know that change must happen across the organization, not necessarily just in, let's say, the marketing lane. It might also need to happen inside culture, inside their organizational culture. It might happen in partnerships. It might also happen in service center, in customer-facing arenas as well. So they know that change must happen. So we often get called that before that problem is actually really detailed, outlined in detail, and we help the client actually get clarity on the impact of the problem, how to define it, how to the vocabulary around it, how to really clarify what the problems are. And we then diagnose that, we deliver that report, and inside that report, we might break out a number of work streams. There might be 5 work streams. And inside those work streams, there might be, between 5 and 10 projects in each work stream. And we more than likely will usually get engaged for a number of those. And then other partners get brought in to execute those other. So we call those, each work stream is a program. Mm-hmm. So we get engaged for 3 work streams, 15 projects, and away we go. That's a transformation program. And we'll work with other consultancies. So we might have a technology consultancy partner. We might have a service design partner that we work with, or a subject matter expert partner in trauma-informed or financial literacy or affordable housing, et cetera, depending on the industry that we're working in.
You just said transformational program, and you talked about change, right? So, change is hard to implement. It's hard to get people to change, especially if you talk about government, organization, or big corporations in the end. Like, what's your go-to thing to get people to open their minds for change, like to get ready to prepare for change? And
Yeah.
how do you work
Yeah.
with people that don't want to change? I guess that's my question here.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really great question. Organizations, I'll take a step back, a lot of the creative industry, because, that's the kind of sphere that, or the audience that we're talking about in this conversation. A lot of the creative industry speaks to the outcome or speaks to the thing that we're doing. We're rebranding, etc. We're doing X, Y, and Z. And we forget that the organization or the brand, etc., is really just a collection of human beings. That's all it is. Some are more experienced than others, but any organization is just a collection of people. Now, each of those people have a different level of accountability and a different level of responsibility. They have those two things. Ultimately, there's a small group of people that are accountable for the organization changing. Understanding those elements and understanding that all we're dealing with are just groups of people, then you begin to tune in and listen to the aspirations, the motivations, the interests, the fears and vulnerabilities of each of those people. And you can then understand what change actually means for them, because it's different for every person. And ultimately, let's say in a private organization where the board of directors is essentially the accountable group, they're the ones that are going to make the final decisions. We will usually work with them, but we also work with, let's say, the frontline people, the other end of the organization, who are dealing with customers. Right? And we will then connect those people together by helping them listen to one another. So we might do 100 interviews of frontline staff, and we'll play back those insights to the board so they can understand what frontline staff want, need, feel, express, etc. We will even bring some, more recently, about a few weeks ago, we were doing a change transformation program for a community health centre, and we brought patients into the strategic planning group and clients so people who had gone through mental health training, etc., and they spoke about their experience, their inspiration and motivation. In short, what all that does is it helps the people who are accountable to make the decision about change. It helps them understand what change is, what kind of change is needed, and how it can be a healthy change for as many people inside the organization as possible.
What you implied and what I got out of it, at least something I heard, which I think is really important, that we need to make emphasis on that, is what you actually do is you actually talk to each and every stakeholder, like technicians, designers, CEOs, management, and also like customers, right? And what I heard that you do is actually you get them to talk together. You connect them, right? You give them a space to talk, a safe space to talk and exchange what they think. I believe that this is something very important when it comes about change, because lower level employees might be scared of change because they don't know if that affects their position, and oftentimes
right.
the people on the top they don't understand that they have those fears, so then the whole change gets blocked from the lower levels and all of that. So do you get them, like, is it helping to get people to talk to each other?
Yeah. I like to think of it as we do a lot of listening rather than talking to people. Like myself, Marita and Karina, who the three of us do kind of the bulk, and Luke and Cass, we do the kind of the bulk of the research work. After Louise and Ben as well. We do the bulk of the research work, and we have a frame of the kind of lines of inquiry, we call them, sort of 5 big questions. And underneath those 5 big questions, we have some other questions, but really there's 5 big questions in our research. But we usually spend a lot of time listening rather than talking to people. And that's really key, because if you're a good listener, the person speaking then walks away reflecting on how they could be a good listener too. And helping people listen to one another is really key in transforming an organization. Now, whether you're presenting new visual identity, verbal identity, complete branding overhaul, culture change, whatever it is, any level of change, and we do those sorts of things. If the key people inside the organization, especially you and the client, that interface, aren't listening to each other, that change transformation program's fucked from the beginning. So it's just gone from the beginning. So in our research work, we do a fair bit of research work. We spend a lot of time listening, like a lot of time just listening to the aspirations of people. And we do we call playback sessions, where we synthesize what we heard and we play it back to other extremes in the organization. So the board, the exec, the people and culture team, we just play it back. And then we listen to them, listen to what they've got to say. And sometimes we play that back to the other extreme of the organization. And that ping pong back and forth is fascinating. And what you get out of it, you're boiling things down and you're getting the real juice of creativity rise to the top. You're actually getting the real essence of what the problem is, and then also what choices we need to make to solve that problem. And therein lies, that's the juice of creativity. Without that, creativity is kind of random and personal and egotistical.
I like that. I like you make creativity more strategic, actually. Yeah, I like that. I want to change direction for a moment, and I want to get something tangible out for, especially like smaller creative studio owners.
Yeah.
People like up to 10 people, studios up to 10 people. What's the value of including strategy into their offer, and how can you sell that? Like, what's the commercial value? I'm talking about like the commercial value for the client. How can a client understand that they need that? Because oftentimes they don't want that.
Yeah. I'm writing your question down. So that's a really good question. So what's the value of strategy into a small creative business? We're a creative business. We still do design work, creative transformation. We do a lot of that. We just do it strategically. Now, a lot of creative firms will say they do that. And I've seen a lot of creative output presentations, seen a lot of them. Strategy is limited to a few pages at the beginning, really. Our strategy programs go from 6 months to a year, and they're 80 documents. They're long processes, right? They're not the few pages at the beginning of the creative presentation. They might get distilled to that, but there's a lot more behind that. So the value of strategy to a small creative business can be enormous. You get to bill more, you get to make more profit, and you get to expand your creative offering as well. Okay, if you're able to do strategy really well, because to do strategy really well, you have to do a lot of research, you have to do a lot of stakeholder engagement, and you have to do a lot of thinking, right? And you can bill for research, stakeholder engagement, and thinking. You can bill for that stuff. Now, to do that, the other thing that a young creative services firm can do, or what strategy will offer, the value of strategy to a young creative services firm will offer, is that introspective thing of allowing them to look at themselves and ask themselves, okay, if we're doing strategy, if we're offering that to the client, what's our strategy, right? Now, a lot of businesses, they don't think of themselves as a client, and they don't apply what they do back to themselves. And it's the biggest mistake they make. If you're doing brand strategy, as a lot of creative businesses claim they do brand strategy, and their brand strategy is shit, right? It's terrible. And it's the same as everyone else's, right? If you're doing brand strategy, your brand strategy better be the best there is, because for your own business. Otherwise, why should you be hired? Like, why would anyone hire you if your own brand strategy is not even moving the needle? It's not even worthy of conversation or demonstrates the value that a client will receive when you do that for them.
How can a brand strategy demonstrate the value that the client receives?
Yeah. So the second part of your question, how can you sell that? Right. So a client looking for a partner to do, we'll use brand strategy as an example, right?
Yeah.
A client looking for a partner is looking for a partner who does brand strategy really well. I know that's obvious. Right? So they're going to look at your case studies, they're going to look at who you worked with, and they're going to look at how well you worked with those organizations. They might even call those organizations. But whilst they're doing that, they're looking at your website, they're in your sales funnel, they're experiencing the ecosystem of your marketing. And so essentially they're in your brand strategy. Yeah. So if something goes wrong there, or if you haven't thought of all that, not just even referencing the customer journey, you haven't thought about your brand strategy in that context, and you think you're going to rely on a few good case studies and a nice website, man, that's what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
What's the cost of entry? That's the bare
minimum.
Thank
you so much for saying that. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's the bare minimum you should be doing. And that isn't even a crux for a decision to be made, or a meaningful decision to be made, because there are other players out there who are doing that and then 10 other things on top of that you're not even seeing. Now, that's a good brand strategy, that when you can't even see, your competitors can't even see what you're doing.
How can the client, how would the client experience its brand strategy? How does it feel? How does that, what are some examples of touch
examples?
Sorry.
Right. So your ideal client is, you're going to take them on a journey to discover who you are, right? That journey is really important because they're going to experience different aspects of your brand, but also it's not about you, it's about the questions they're asking. So if you're not answering those questions along that journey, then you're not really doing anything strategic. You're just sort of selling, you're just sort of saying the same thing over and over again, right?
So the strategy is kind of helping clients to get to know you, to align to your values.
Yeah, ultimately, all of that. Ultimately, what it's doing, your brand strategy should be doing, is it should be filling the trust battery, right?
Trust battery, good.
The trust battery, it's not my term, it's the term developed by the CEO of Shopify, Toby Lutke, wrote a great article called The Trust Battery. Essentially, by the time you're sitting down with a client and you're talking about doing the work, potentially doing the work, the trust battery should be half full. And the goal of your marketing strategy, brand strategy, should be to fill that trust battery halfway. If you can get more than halfway, fantastic, Marco. But if you can get halfway, by the time you're sitting down, that client is, well, on the way to trusting you, is already halfway there, which is fantastic. And you're not having a conversation about how much it costs.
Yes.
No, all that minutiae. You're not having a conversation about that. You're having a conversation about the barriers that you might come across, the challenges that we might have to solve together. You're having really deep, low, bottom of the funnel questions rather than these sort of top of funnel, tire kicking questions.
I love that. So that's actually a huge benefit. I just want to emphasize on that. It's a huge thing for most creative studios is they get stuck in those top level questionnaires, like why should we pick you? Who did you work for, right? And what you're saying, like if you apply a brand strategy correctly to your creative business, you don't have those conversations anymore. The client comes in, they already have the trust that you are a possible vendor, a possible partner, and they don't want to waste the time on building a trust, but they now want to understand how the future will look like, right? And if you have people like talking about a common future together, you almost solve them, right? Because they're already thinking in the future.
That's right. And one thing that we do in our business is we give away everything. I mean, we've got online courses that essentially teach everything that we do, right?
Yeah.
And we do that for a couple of reasons, is that we really believe that we've got to help creative community. We've got to share everything we know. That's another thing. But it also keeps our competitors guessing, because we're giving away the stuff that they keep secret.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're left wondering, geez, what's their strategy, right? What are they actually doing? If they're actually telling the world exactly how we do strategy, you can actually learn how we do strategy. We did a course called the Creative Pro, which teaches young creative studios exactly how we run our business: finances, marketing, positioning, sales, the whole thing. And that's another course that we do. So part of our brand strategy is to teach everything we know, like give it away. So all that top of funnel stuff, we just give it away. And then our actual brand strategy, when you're deep in it, is it's very unique to us, very personal to the relationships that we nurture. And the goal of our brand strategy is to fill the trust battery to the point where our clients, I've got some testimonials from clients that are just remarkable. Like I've never heard. I feel really honored and humbled that we've had that level of impact on our clients. It's beautiful because the goal of our brand strategy is to fill that trust battery.
So I really love how this whole conversation went, because it's like we got from something very strategic, like something very rational, like strategy, like even the word is boring, at least to me. We actually connected that to trust, to human trust, right? That's something something very emotional, something very, very important to a lot of people.
I told you, I'm happy to talk about this till forever.
I know.
This is what I do every day.
I know, but it's like, this is the first time someone connected the like strategy to more human thing. And I know you're very empathic. Like your programs, by the way, you should buy his programs. They're amazing. But you actually show a lot of vulnerability in your programs, and you talk about things that other people don't really want to talk about. And it's like, you definitely give away a lot of actually everything, as you just said, on how to do the things. And I think this is a huge difference to a lot of others, because when people come to you, and it's not like now they have everything, they can do it themselves, right? Your clients don't want to do it themselves. They don't want to. They just want to understand how you think. Once they understand how you think, they can trust you more, and they can predict where the whole thing is going, right?
Yeah, some want to do it themselves, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine, which is why we have to really keep rethinking the role of our business, and we have to keep rethinking of who we are as a partner, and so if they want to do it themselves, that's perfectly fine. That's cool. You can't be for everyone, and that's what positioning is, right? You can't really be for everyone. And at the heart of a good brand strategy is positioning. Like, you've got to make that decision. Where are we positioned in the market? Who are we? Volvo safety, right? It's one really straightforward. We're on the two different sides of the world, and you and I both understand that. That's positioning. That's very good. That's very clever positioning. And that's a decision, and that's a decision that a lot of creative services firms, a lot of creative studios, whatever you want to call them, they really struggle to actually make that decision. But that's one of the choices you have to make in a really good strategy is, how are we positioned? When you're going to read our positioning, it's written on the front page of our website, that it's exactly who we want to be, and it's a decision. So you're not going to be for everyone, but you have to be for that.
But that's scary. Especially up and coming studios, it's scary to limit. people think they limit themselves by actually positioning and niching down and being narrow rather than broad. What do you tell
Yeah.
them?
Oh, look, that saying, I'm going to change the subject a little bit. When you hear people saying, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't want to get too big.
Yes.
Yeah. Right? That's like saying, I don't want to swim in the pool just in case I make the Olympics. It's stupidity, right? Come back to positioning. It's like you have to make a choice. You have to make a decision, and you have to narrow. It's not about narrowing down, but it actually, good strategy is just as much about saying no to things as it is about saying yes to things. You have to learn what you have to say no to. So that's what positioning is. And it's not done in a single workshop. It's not done with a piece of paper where you fill the boxes in and you end up and you have a score at the end. Yeah, that's all bullshit. That's just all bullshit. It's done over a long period of time by making a lot of fucking mistakes, by burning a lot of bridges, by coming back and learning from that. It's done slowly. It's done one proposal at a time, one quote at a time, one win at a time. It's one thing at a time, and it's slow and continual. And it's a habit that you have to form, because sometimes you might say, this is our positioning, and you go for a year and just sort of chip slightly, because 12 months ago you thought it was here, but it's just slightly over here. That's how you build really great positioning. It's not done in a fucking week-long sprint. It's not done like that. Those things are just distractions. They're excuses for people to sell you shit, Positioning is done slowly and deliberately, and sometimes it's done without you. The client will do it themselves. They'll say, thank you, see you, bye, we'll take it from here. And that's great, that's fine. But great brand strategy and great positioning, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, if it did, we'd all be fucking billionaires.
But you can't, you got to start somewhere. What you're saying is yes, start with some positioning and let it evolve over time. And the thing I see a lot of people doing, it just came out of a call actually before we had this recording. People are overthinking the whole positioning thing. They think they have to figure it out in the next couple of days, maybe weeks. And then that's it. And that's it for the rest of, I don't know, eternity. Yeah. And it's not that. It's you just want to find that starting point. What do I think is the differentiator? What do I think is who I want to go after? What do I think who I am? And this will change because you get a different perspective. You understand yourself, your clients, your market better. And the market is changing as well. So you kind of need to stay ahead of that. Or a lot of it. So it's not that positioning is never ending, really. Is it?
That's right, absolutely. As we are, so we go back to the point about, organizations are just people, right? They're just groups of people. Now, us as individuals, we've known each other for a decade, right? We're very different today than when we were 10 years ago when we first met. Now, granted, we've caught up many times over the years, and we've grown up, haven't we? We've raised children, we've made mistakes, we've had some successes, we've matured, right? Mm-hmm. So organizations do that as well. They mature, they grow through experience. And so you can't actually say, we're going to write the style guide and the brand strategy for Marco and Dimitri 10 years ago, and then the job's done, right? It's not true at all. I mean, I've got a lot of exploring to do, and I'm happy to do that. But and a brand strategy is just that. It's exactly that.
So you could actually sell a retain on positioning. You could do this to take a position check back every year or so. I like that.
Look, partnerships are really important. And, the word retainer, ongoing partnerships with clients are really important. I think we have to look deeper than the surface level stuff for the really meaningful partnerships,
So partnerships, a lot of what does it mean to be a partner of a brand direct client of a big corporation? Because a lot of people want to be that, but they don't really
Yeah,
understand what it is.
yeah. Um, what does it mean to be a partner? It means that, I always get asked, what we do, and I think, I'll go back to trust. Our product is trust, right? And if we jeopardize that in any way at any point, doesn't matter how good our case study looks at the end. It doesn't matter whatsoever. To be a partner of any substance, any meaning, you have to have the trust of not just the person you're working with, the marketing leader, etc. You also have to have the trust of the people who run the organization, usually the board, the CEO, the executives. They have to trust you. And I'm not saying they have to like you. They have to fucking trust you. They have to know that you're going to go away and they can give you the keys and they can go on holiday. I've got login details to very, accounts for clients, and, our clients trust us to the point where they go away and they know that their keys are safe with us, so to speak. One client, I just got a case study up on screen. One client said, Tanker are part of our organization now in a way few partners are able to ever realize. And that's a really amazing testimonial that I've got from a client that means so much to me, because that was born of 4 or 5 years we worked with this client of just proving that we are trustworthy and we have integrity, and we have our dignity, which means that we say no because we have our professional dignity as well. And that's how trust is built. It's over time.
So do they trust you? Do they trust your team? It's not just you, right? It's like they trust the whole team here.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
What's the role of, what is your role in the business? Are you still doing the brand design? How much time do you spend on like the actually getting clients, engaging with clients, building the trust with clients? Like, how much time do you spend on that compared to?
I'm the chief trust officer.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, I don't work on the tools. I'll do a lot of writing, so I'll write a lot of the strategies. I'll do not all of them, but I'll do the kind of essence of them. Marita and I do a lot of the writing of strategies, but I'll do the work that's really close to the client. Then we have our team does most of the other work, I guess the heavy lifting. Cass is does our creative direction. She's on the tools. Karina leads up our research effort. She does a lot of our research design. But all of us do research, so it's really important that one of the things we changed is we removed layers. So we don't have someone that plays the role of just the project manager. So someone plays that role, but they also do other things so they basically are intimate with research, or they might carry out the research, or they might be in the creative or something, or the strategy. But we don't have singular roles.
Oh, that's nice.
That have a layer, that creates a layer between us and the client. The client always speaks and deals with the person that is leading up that effort. So Cass, Marita, Karina, and myself, we're all client facing, and we're also doing as well.
How much time would you think do you spend nurturing clients before they actually sell, before they buy?
In pre-sales, yeah.
Pre-sales,
Wow. Sometimes 2 years, 3 years.
And what's the outcome? Like, what kind of budgets are we talking about here?
Well, sometimes the outcome is thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Budgets can range from $20,000 to $1 million. Like, budgets have it's different for every organization. Like, but the nurturing stage can last. Sometimes it lasts so long, Marco, that it's ridiculous. 2 years, 3 years is not uncommon at all. That's where getting really great at using a CRM is so important.
And you have, you have a newsletter, right? That's also part of the nurturing strategy, I guess.
Yeah. So I've been writing the weekly journal of creative leadership for 9 years. It was started around the time we met, and one article a week. It's on a website that we own called marchfirst.com.au, where our online courses are. And that weekly journal is about creative leadership. So it speaks to us. It speaks to the essence of what our clients really believe. And a lot of them subscribe to that. A lot of potential clients subscribe to that. A lot of creative people subscribe to that. It actually advocates for a more inclusive, more conscious, more transformational leader rather than someone who just does and executes. It's actually someone who is actually aware of the world and really cares about the issues, that the context of the change that they exist in and the issues that they exist in. That's really important because we live in a pretty fucked up world, very complex world. And all of these things that we're talking about, rebranding, organizational transformation, all of that, they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in this world, and we have to be conscious of this world that we live in. And that's what my weekly journal kind of speaks about.
I actually love reading.
Thank you.
I think I'm on the newsletter for 9 years straight now. So you
are
pretty much that's pretty much the only newsletter I've been following for 9 years. Something.
Thank you.
What I love is the big picture perspective you put into this, and a lot of stories. Like you actually share a lot of stories in your newsletters. I like that.
I see it as a journal. So I literally sit on Tuesdays, and I'm going to sit down and write the next one as soon as we finish this call. I sit down on Tuesday and I just write my journal. That's all it is.
It's your journal. I love that.
Yeah.
Jim, one more question before I'll let you go to write your newsletter. What's the title of the newsletter?
The Weekly Journal of Creative Leadership.
No, this week's episode, this week's issue.
What's the title of this one? This issue is called An Explorer of the World.
And it's about...
you have to read it.
I will read it. Okay, I'll read it. All right, everyone on the call, on the episode, watch out for the newsletter. So the question I want to ask you, what's the message you want to give to the industry? What's something you want the industry to learn or to understand?
Look, I think that creative people, I think we have to reimagine who we are. I think we have to, it's in essence, the essence of creativity is change. So we have to understand that we have this enormous innate strength within us that as creative people, and that's creativity. We can't forget that. And we can only do that if we are far more conscious and aware of the world that we live in. We can't sit there and exist on the tools in front of a Mac, moving a mouse. We have to sit up and understand of this world that we live in. It's only then that we can actually do really meaningful work and create change. And we also have to learn about inclusivity and connection, because the world that we live in is diverse and it's becoming more and more important for us to bring lots and lots of different people together, irrespective of where they are, where they come from, how old they are, their ethnicity, their gender identity, etc. The more we bring people together, the more creative we can be. I think if you just take that away, that'll be wonderful.
I like it. The more I like the inclusivity that brings out the real creativity, the kind of different layers, facets. Love it.
Hello.
Jim, thank you so much. And I know you could have talked forever, and I hope we'll get the opportunity to just do another session, the second round or something.
Anytime.
Cool. Jim, have an amazing day, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Muka. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Marco Pfan, and I hope to see you all again on our next show where we unfold creative business minds.